Okay, so I want to talk today about the number one reason why people can't stay sober, why they can't maintain their sobriety. And I want to talk about how we can fix that. Because I've been sober 10 years. I went through the whole process, and this reason why people can't stay sober came up for me multiple times, and I was able to conquer it. So, what is it that makes it so people can't stay sober? It's the reason why you were drinking or using drugs in the first place. Most likely, if it became a problem for you, you were running from something. You were running from a traumatic event that happened in your life that you didn't know how to cope with and process, and you chose to use drugs or alcohol to distract yourself from facing that problem. So that's the whole thing why people can't keep sobriety going. They're not prepared to face that problem. That's it. And I've had I've known numerous people, tons of my friends who have gone through rehab and for alcohol and drugs. And I had one friend, this gal I used to work with, and no, we were close friends. She was a drug addict when I met her, and it was relatively in check. We worked together. She had a boyfriend. Her life was together, but she used drugs every single day. As time progressed, it only got worse, and the drugs that she got into got worse because what ended up happening was she had one initial traumatic event in her childhood that then she didn't know how to cope with and process and deal with, so she chose to just use drugs. The problem is we have these traumatic events, we don't deal with them, they end up destroying us from within, and then all of our actions, our emotions, our behaviors, in turn, we're catering to that traumatic event that's destroying us, and then we're making decisions that destroy ourselves even more. So it brings on even more trauma and more problems. And this is what happened with her. So she had this initial traumatic event, as a child that was like destroying her from within. Her boyfriend dies in a car wreck. Boom, it loads on another major traumatic event for her. She's not dealing with the first one, now she's got this other one. So she goes from using, lighter drugs to now she's doing hard drugs. And she finds a boyfriend who does hard drugs too. So they're doing hard drugs together. And by this time, I wasn't working with her anymore, and I only had heard about what was happening to her. But what was happening was she'd be at work, and she was using these hard drugs pretty much all day. And she would literally, like fall asleep standing up and be like laid out. So we worked in a produce department at a natural food store together. And people would find her slumped against the racks of produce asleep because she was on these drugs. And the store sent her to rehab, I think 4 times on their dime, which is, rehab is not cheap, man. That's minimum 10 grand. And all 4 times, it was the same thing. She would be sober. She'd go to rehab, they'd build her up, and she'd become sober, and then boom, she'd fall right back into line. And what's interesting about rehab and achieving that little brief amount of sobriety is it kind of plays the same part as doing the drugs. It's just another big distraction. It was a big enough distraction for her to where she forgot about her problems because she was tied up in this whole big to-do of rehab. And then ultimately when that was over, the feelings, the emotions, the trauma began to resurface, and it was naturally the behavior came in to then use drugs and ignore it. So, how do we break that? How do we break that cycle? And this is the exact same situation that I faced. I experienced childhood emotional trauma, carried on through my adulthood. I chose to ignore it and use drugs and drink, and eventually it led to more trauma piling on. And in turn, it led to the point where it was a do or die situation. Either I was going to figure this out and stop using drugs, or it was going to be game over. So, what is the key here? to doing this, I would say the very first step, and now that I've been 10 years sober, I can look back, and if I could tell myself this is what you do, then I would have achieved what I wanted a lot sooner. So it's nice to be able to share this and have a good think on this and really give you or somebody you know the shortcuts. And it's several steps. And I want to focus on the first step, because to get to the first step, it's several steps to just get to there. And the very first step is awareness. You have to be self-aware. You have to have awareness of your thoughts, your behaviors, and your actions. And awareness is hard to achieve. The pathway to awareness can be very long for some, it can be short for others. It really depends if you have these mechanisms in place that can help you get there. So let's start with awareness being, let's start at the end. We're at awareness. How did we get there? Let's work our way back. Because awareness is really important, because it's going to give us the understanding of what we need to face. And when we have the understanding and we're looking at the problem, we then can start pursuing the solution. Because if you don't know, what you're facing, what your problem is, how are you going to know what to look for, how to solve your problem, what direction to go? Awareness is like our guiding compass. So it's key. It's the very first step. So right before awareness, we're working our way backwards. Say we have awareness, but how do we get there? Let's go backwards. So right before that is the power of self-observation. It's the ability to see outside of yourself and act in the third person and view you can't be attached emotionally at this point. You're purely subjective. You're having to observe in an objective way. Maybe I said that wrong. Subjective, objective, either way, you're emotionally disconnected from yourself, and you're observing your thoughts, your emotions, and your actions. And while you are observing those are going to be the indicators of how you're getting to awareness. So right before awareness is the skill of being observant, observing yourself, being like viewing yourself in the third person. This happened to me. I was triggered by this with a dream. I viewed myself in the third person in the dream state. So, this is what happened to me, where I realized was I need to observe myself to gain awareness. And if someone had told me to start practicing that, observing myself in a non-emotional state, just purely objective, it's like you can't judge it. You can't say this behavior is bad or good or wrong or right. You just have to observe it to see what's happening. So what's right? What's before self-observation? The way we get to self-observation and ultimately to awareness is we have to spend time with ourselves. We have to change our behavior, and we have to change our routine, and we have to put down the distractions. And that's the whole thing here, is if you're always distracted, if you're using drugs, if you're listening to music, if you're watching stuff, if you're engaged with people constantly, all these things that are distracting you from the opportunity to sit with yourself and engage with yourself and observe yourself. You have to take on the concept of being ruthlessly selfish in a good way. You are ruthlessly selfish about how much you care about yourself, and that in order to be the best person you can be for you and others around you, is you have to be selfish, and you have to focus all your time and energy on yourself to fix yourself. You have to be ruthless and be selfish if you want to make this happen. And in order to get to the point that we're observing ourselves, that then in turn gives us the awareness, we have to take the time and we have to sit with ourselves. And most people do not do that. If you look around, everyone is on the earbuds, they're on the screen, they're reading It's another thing that's distracting you. They're watching TV. They're engaged constantly with another person. There's no time that they spend alone. And, all these things, these are all free. You don't have to pay someone to do this. This is just changing your mindset and tweaking your behavior a little bit to achieve these big results. So if you want to make this happen, you have to spend time alone. That's the bottom line. That's what I did. I took on the lone wolf mentality. I was like, forget all the hanger-on party people I used to hang out with. Forget chasing girls, because I was coming off of a breakup and like a low point, the lowest point I'd ever been in my life. And it was like, you have to go lone wolf, whatever that looks like. But what it looks like is you spending time with yourself. The most comfortable place to spend time with yourself is nature. Nature is nurturing. Nature is grounding. Nature is beautiful. Nature has these built-in mechanisms and tools that are there to help you. If you're having a hard time being with yourself, because this is the point where you're in the mindset of objectively observing yourself, and you're not going to like the thoughts that are in your head, because they're going to be negative, because there's this negative dark force inside of you, and when you begin to take the time to look at this thing, it's going to be negative. The easiest way to alleviate that is go into nature and sit by a stream and practice what I call conscious meditation. It isn't clearing your mind. No, we don't want to do that. Everything that's coming up is you releasing all that negativity. It has to come up. It's inside of you. It's coming up through your brain, and you're visualizing it, hearing it, seeing it in your mind, and you're releasing it. That is this stuff is coming out of you, because what's happened before is it comes up and you're instantly like drinking, smoking, snorting, looking, listening, all these things, and they're pushing it back down. So we want to avoid that. That's why we're opening up, our consciousness, our vision, our ability of observation. Let all this stuff come up. Listen to it in your mind. We're not judging it. You have to get out of the mindset of like it's good, it's bad. It just is. And when you reach this point of non-judgment about yourself, you're consciously observing, you're in this meditative state, it begins to let go. And this is the practice of spending time with yourself, conscious meditations in a natural space by the water. The water will pull all this crap out of you. I did this a ton, man. I just would go by a stream and just lose sense of time and just look into the water and just think. Because the water, it's reflective, it's a mirror, it's moving. So this will pull the thoughts out. We're just letting them go. And what this is doing is this practice of conscious meditation in nature by water, just observing our thoughts, this is giving us the data. This is a system of gaining awareness. This is like a step-by-step system of gaining awareness. So this is giving us the data that we need to understand what's going on with us. And then from that, it's going to get turned into information, then into knowledge, then into wisdom once you begin acting upon it. That's another system that you can use. But it's really important that we spend time with ourselves, start releasing this, and just getting this stuff out. And it takes, just like I said, conscious meditation from an objective standpoint in nature next to water. Or, there's other things like a fire. A fire has really helped me, sitting and staring into a fire. Other people have mentioned like looking at a sunset. So these things, whatever gets us into that meditative space, is what's going to begin and this release. How do we get to that conscious, objective, meditative state? Because that is a new behavior, and everything we've done has distracted us from that. There's a skill that we need to learn, and that is discipline. That's really it. Discipline is a skill. It's something that you practice and that you learn and that you get better and better at. And a lot of people think becoming disciplined is some mystical thing that we need an expert, we need, the smartest brain scientist to tell us how to become disciplined. But in all actuality, you are already disciplined. You just don't realize it. So, what is discipline? It's doing something hard that we don't want to do over and over again. It becomes a behavior. A great example of this, and I tell my friends this all the time who say they're not disciplined. I'm like, do you brush your teeth every night before you go to bed? And they're like, well, yeah. I'm like, dude, you're disciplined in the maintenance and care of your teeth. That is a disciplined practice. That is a practice. So think about that. Like, no one wants to, do this maintenance tooth care every single day. It's a pain in the ass. Whatever. But it takes discipline to do that every single day or every night, whatever your routine is. And that is a form of discipline. And so just think about in your life already, what is your practice, your discipline? Because you may not realize, you might be very disciplined and not be aware of that. And what you can do is you can draw upon that for understanding of how to transfer your own practice of discipline that you already have, and transfer that into applying it to other things that are hard. Because that's what being disciplined, it makes doing these hard things over and over again easier. And so, maybe it's your morning routine. You get up in the morning, you take a shower, you have a cup of coffee, you sit down, you read the newspaper, and you do that every single day. That routine is a form of discipline. So that is the step before sitting with ourselves in that conscious meditative state. How do we get to become disciplined? This is the very, very beginning of this whole step-by-step process to just gaining awareness of what the hell our problem is. Because if you don't know what you've been running from, or the fact that you have been running from something, you're never going to get sober. So that's what we're trying to eliminate. The reason why people cannot achieve sobriety. I know, because I've done it. It's been 10 years and I'm going strong. So take it from me. I will always be honest with you. I wish I would have known this, man, when I started all this, because this was incredibly challenging. And this is the most overlooked first step to all of this personal transformation, healing, whatever our issue that we're facing. If you can get this, and I wish society gave us this tool, because this is one of the most powerful tools that is inside of you right now, and it's being used against you. And we're not taught how to use this. And what I'm talking about is your dopamine system. So I've been learning a lot about the dopamine system. In my opinion, it is the most important, fundamental, powerful tool that you have at your disposal. That whatever made you, whether it's God or Jah or the universe or an alien lizard king living in the center of the earth, whatever, they gave you this tool, and it's your dopamine system. So your dopamine system, see, the big elephant in the room with all of this is all these systems and our bodies and everything that we're currently living in 2026 were designed when we were like cavemen. We weren't designed to live in this modern society and, thriving in the modern age. That's what this channel is all about, is how do we survive this dystopian nightmare that we're in. One of the things is understanding these ancient mechanisms that have been within us that were designed for our survival in the old times. So the dopamine system, it's really this tool that's part of your survival. And what it does is it allows you to engage in difficult things. And it's a brain chemical that gets released while you're engaging in something. So, the way to understand it is, say you're like, a caveman who has to go out and hunt all day. That is incredibly challenging. It takes a lot of effort, focus, and energy. Your brain has a chemical that it makes to help you focus and achieve that. And the more you do it, the easier it gets. And so think, wouldn't it be amazing to leverage that powerful tool to be able to apply it to your practice of discipline, to ultimately gaining awareness to how to solve your problem. This is the tool right now that's being used against you. And this is what we're seeing right now in this landmark lawsuit against Meta. So Meta, their whole platform, and this goes for Instagram, Facebook, and this also goes for YouTube as well, is the way we interact with these platforms is it provides spikes in dopamine. And they set these up because they understand brain chemistry and they understand neuroscience. And these people are using it against us. And so the dopamine system is designed to get you to engage in behavior and make it a habit. And ideally, you're doing things that are benefiting you and that are healthy and good. But it can be used against you. And it's the exact same mechanism that we engage in unhealthy behavior. And that was our drinking and our drug use, watching, porno, anything negative triggers the same system, and it reinforces the behavior, making it a habit. And so a big part of understanding ourselves and how to empower ourselves to change all this is understanding the dopamine system. And so back to Facebook and Meta and Instagram and all that. So the way that works is with these images, when you're scrolling, it spikes your dopamine. You become interested. You press on the image, and it provides a dopamine release to you, and this becomes addictive over time. And the problem is with the short form content. Long form content, it's not as destructive, but it's with the short form content. I'm not going to go into the whole thing. Currently, I'm writing a book. It's nothing crazy, but it's just a simple guide on how to reset your dopamine system. That's what I'm doing every morning. I wake up at 4 a.m. I have my routine. I follow a routine that I reset my dopamine system every morning so I can have maximum motivation, control, focus, and leverage over my whole day. And this is the biggest tool that I've realized. I didn't have this in the beginning. I had to muscle my way through this, and it took a long time. But if you want to get started on this, I figured this out on my own. All the information is out there. If you want to wait for my book and buy that, it'll be like $20. I'm going to do a course on it too. Then wait for that. But I figured this all out on my own. All the knowledge and information is there. If you are hungry and driven enough and you really want to solve your problems, get after that dopamine system reset. I'll link the Dose Effect book. That was the first book that keyed me into this. Honestly, there's not a lot of information out there on truly understanding your dopamine system in a simple way and how to reset it and really gain control. That's why I'm writing this book. Because everything that has to do with human behavior and brain chemistry and neuroscience is kind of off limits to just average people like you and me. Like, we have to be a neuroscientist to understand this, and that's just not true. We got to get over the fact that these experts control us and guide our decision making. We can fully comprehend this. I have fully comprehended it, and I now use it every day. That's why I'm writing this book, to just lay it out in simple terms. All this can be simplified so we understand it. The main thing is we want to gain control of our dopamine system. That is it's the most valuable tool that we have. Well, we have many valuable tools, but this is a huge one in changing behavior. So we've worked our way from all we want is awareness. We've worked our way back on how do we achieve that. So we start with, we have to reset our dopamine system. We have to get control of that system. Number one, start there. Next, we start practicing discipline. We use our dopamine system to control our behaviors and the things that we engage with. And what we want to do is we want to start reinforcing positive behavior that's going to change us and help improve our lives. Next, we're going to go from dopamine. We go to practicing discipline. We put that into spending time with ourselves and changing our behavior of constantly being distracted, and we start spending time with ourselves, which shifts us into the practice of our conscious observation of what we're experiencing. This is the point where you begin looking at this demon that's inside of you. This is the hardest part, because you've been running from this your whole life, and that's how it was for me. I ran from this thing for 30 plus years. It just takes practice looking at this ugly thing, man, that's inside of you. But when you face it, it runs. Because when you shed the light on this demon, it has nowhere to hide, and it begins to leave. So get into nature, practice the conscious meditation technique, and wherever your sweet spot is, if it's by a river, if it's at a campfire, if it's just walking and hiking, if it's watching the sunset, if it's listening to the wind blow. I remember I had this experience in nature where I was up on this mountain and I was watching the clouds move and the wind blowing, and it was like so mesmerizing, and I had all these thoughts, and it was amazing to experience that. So that might be your sweet spot. Anyway, we get to the point of the conscious meditation. We're observing and letting go of the thoughts, and ultimately that is going to give us our awareness of our situation and our problem. Once we have the awareness, we can begin the next steps of coping and understanding and learning how to live with this emotional trauma, with this thing that we've been hiding from, using drugs, whatever the distraction has been. The awareness will give us the insight and the understanding of how to get to the point where we can live with this thing. Throw this, because this isn't going away. We have to accept. We have to get to the point of acceptance, and awareness will get us there. Throw this thing on your back, and we're fucking going down the road, man. And we're done being drunk or stoned or high or constantly distracted. It's time to start living and deciding for yourself. So this is the first step, and this is why people cannot stay sober, because they don't take the time to get to this very important point, this very important place of awareness. Anyway, I hope this was helpful. I think I'm just going to do a run of all these sobriety videos, because it's really important. Anyway, I appreciate your time. And please, comment if you have anything cool to say. Tell me your story. And I'm just going to keep going. Okay, have a good day.